Welcome to Dark and Haunting Tales, horror aficionados. In this video, we delve into the disturbing world of night shifts, where the unimaginable comes to life. Join us as we unravel hair-raising tales that will keep you on your edge of your seat. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on post notification. And for all of you subscribed, thank you for your support. Brace yourselves for a roller coaster of emotions as we unveil real-life scary night shift stories that will send shivers down your spine. Beware, these stories aren't for the faint of heart. The stories may contain some acts or events that may be disturbing for some viewers. Be advised. Now, as always, are you ready to be terrified? Then let's begin. It was one of these late nights at the old cinema in California. The kind that's quiet and eerie once the last movie ends. My coworker Jennifer and I were responsible for tidying up the place, while John, the trusty security guard, kept an eye on the premises. We had done these night shifts many times before, but this one was about to turn into a survival story we'd never forget. The last credits rolled, and the moviegoers filed out, leaving us in a dark and empty theater. Jennifer and I grabbed our cleaning supplies, ready to tackle the post-movie mess, while John started his usual rounds. We always tried to make the best of our time, chatting and joking as we worked. But that night, there was an unusual tension in the air. Maybe it was the flickering lights, or the fact that we were alone in a vast dark cinema. Whatever it was, it gave us an unsettling feeling. As we cleaned the aisles, I suddenly saw a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned swiftly, but there was nothing there, just an empty row of seats.
Did you see that, John?
I asked, my voice shaking. Jennifer looked puzzled, her brow furrowing.
See what? I thought I saw someone, a shadowy figure, right there.
I said, pointing at the empty seats.
But they disappeared.
Jennifer glanced around, but there was no one in sight.
Maybe it was just your imagination playing tricks on you.
I wanted to believe that too, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off.
Maybe you're right. Let's just finish up and get out of here.
We went back to cleaning, but I couldn't concentrate. I kept glancing over my shoulder, my nerves on edge. It was then that I heard a noise, a faint whisper coming from somewhere in the dark theater.
Jennifer, did you hear that?
I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jennifer strained to listen, and her face went pale.
Yeah, I heard it. It sounded like a man's voice.
Fear gripped us as we both realized that we were not alone. We had no idea who this person was or why they were in the theater after hours. We decided to contact John on the walkie-talkie, hoping he could help. But when John's voice crackled through, he sounded alarmed.
I saw someone on my rounds. They looked suspicious and they are headed your way.
Panic set in. We gathered our things and made our way to the exit. But as we turned the corner, we came face to face with a man. He was wearing a tattered coat, his face obscured by shadows. The only thing visible was a twisted grin. We froze, our heart pounding as the man stepped closer, blocking our path. "You two aren't going anywhere," he said with a wide grin on his face. Terrified, we turned and ran in the opposite direction, racing to find John. We had to get out of there, away from that dangerous man who had invaded our cinema. We finally found John, and together we made our way to the exit, just as the police arrived to apprehend the intruder. It turned out that this guy had just committed a crime and had been hiding in the cinema, hoping to evade the authorities. That night, we narrowly escaped a chilling encounter with a felon in that dark cinema. It was a stark reminder that even in familiar places, danger can lurk, and that sometimes our ordinary routines can take a terrifying turn. I've worked countless late shifts as a waitress in a quaint restaurant in Illinois. But one fateful night, an encounter with a customer would send shivers down my spine, turning a seemingly ordinary evening into a terrifying nightmare. The restaurant was dimly lit, and the familiar hum of chatter filled the air. As the evening wore on, I noticed him, a man sitting at a corner table, shrouded in shadows. He had an unsettling presence, like he didn't quite belong. Taking a deep breath, I approached his table, smiling nervously.
Good evening, sir. What can I get you tonight?
He simply grunted, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I couldn't help but notice his odd appearance, disheveled clothes, a dirty beard, and a gaze that seemed to penetrate right through me. He ordered a cup of coffee and a slice of pie, all the while keeping those intense eyes on me. The unease deepened as he said,
Why in the hell is that a beautiful girl like you working in a place like this?
I replied, trying to be polite as possible.
Well, thank you for the compliment, but I truly enjoy my work here.
Then I went about my duties, constantly aware of his presence. Before he finally left, he asked me,
So when do you finish your shift? Maybe I can give you a ride home.
I replied, trying to be as calm as possible.
Thank you, but I have my own car.
He didn't give any further comment. He paid, then stood up and looked at me from top to bottom with those creepy eyes as he left. I breathed a sigh of relief. I couldn't believe there was such sick people out there in this world. And I thank God for ending this encounter with that creepy man. But little did I know how wrong I was. The rest of my shift went on as usual. I chatted with coworkers, cleared tables, and exchanged laughter with regulars. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When my shift finally ended, I gathered my things and headed toward the exit. The restaurant's parking lot lay under a dimly lit street lamp, and my footsteps echoed in the quiet night. My heart skipped a beat when I saw him, standing in the distance, his silhouette unmistakable. Fear tightened its grip on me. How had he known when I would exit? My mind raced with all sorts of possibilities, none of them comforting. Should I turn back and ask a coworker for help, or should I try to make it to my car? I chose the latter, my footsteps quickening as I approached my vehicle. The man moved closer, his figure menacing in the dim light. I fumbled for my car keys, my fingers trembling, and I could hear him calling my name in a low, sinister tone. Without looking back, I fumbled with the car door and slid inside. The engine roared to life, and I sped away from the restaurant, my heart pounding in my chest. As I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw him, standing in the parking lot, his face a twisted mask of anger and frustration I saw him standing in the parking lot, his face a twisted mask of anger and frustration. I couldn't explain how he had tracked me down or what he wanted, but I knew one thing for sure. I needed to stay as far as possible from him. I didn't return to work at that restaurant after that night, and I filed a police report detailing the creepy encounter. They assured me they would investigate, but I never heard anything more about it. The memory of that night still lingers, a reminder that the line between safety and danger can be alarmingly thin. I never found out who that man was or what he wanted, but some experiences, no matter how terrifying, are seared into your memory for life. I've had my fair share of creepy encounters while working the night shift at that gas station on the back roads of Texas. People passing through in the dead of night, strange tales, and the eerie feeling of being miles away from civilization are all part of the job. But one fateful night turned an ordinary shift into a terrifying ordeal that I'll never forget. I was just about to grab a fresh cup of coffee, trying to stay awake during the late hours, when he walked in. The door swung open with a faint chime, and I glanced up to see a tall, disheveled man, a heavy trench coat barely concealing his rough appearance. My instincts screamed that something was off about him.
How can I help you, sir?
I asked, trying to sound as composed as possible. The man's eyes bore into mine, making me nervous. He finally spoke, his voice gruff.
You got any cash here?
I hesitated.
I can make a change for you if you make a purchase.
His lips curled into a sinister grin.
I ain't interested in change.
Panic began to well up inside me, and I reached for the phone to dial 911. But before I could complete the call, the man lunged over the counter, grabbing my wrist and sending the phone crashing to the ground. I fought to break free, but he was strong. I could see a glint of madness in his eyes.
You ain't calling nobody,
he said. He dragged me through the store, my mind racing for a way out. The place was empty, and the nearest town was miles away. I knew I had to think fast. I spotted a row of shelves with various items and reached for a can of cleaner, spraying it into the man's face. He let out a roar of pain and stumbled back. I didn't waste a second. I ran through the dimly lit aisles, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear him shouting behind me, vowing to catch me. I dashed out the back door, sprinting towards the empty road. Just as I reached the road, I spotted headlights in the distance. A lone car was approaching, and I waved it down frantically. It screeched to a halt, and the driver, a woman, looked at me in horror.
Please help me.
I gasped.
There's a man after me, a dangerous man.
The woman didn't hesitate. She unlocked the doors, and I tumbled into the car. We sped away just as the man burst out of the gas station, screaming in rage. The police were called, and they searched the area. They found the man hiding in the woods nearby, and it turned out he had a long history of violence and criminal activities. That night, I narrowly escaped a terrifying encounter with a dangerous felon. It was a great reminder that danger can strike when you least expect it, even in the quietest corners of the world. I'm John, a security guard for an old, mostly empty office building in the heart of New York City. My job typically consists of quiet nights, patrolling dimly lit hallways and making sure everything is in order. But one night, something happened that made my heart race and my hair stand on end. It was around 2 a.m. when I first heard it. Footsteps echoing through the building. My footsteps were muffled by the carpeted floors, but these were distinct, like they were coming from a hard-soled shoes. I couldn't see anyone around, and that's when unease started to crawl up my spine. With my flashlight in hand, I moved closer to the source of the sound. As I turned the corner, I braced myself to confront the intruder, only to find an empty hallway bathed in an eerie pale light. There was no one there, just an oppressive silence, like the building was holding its breath. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I called out,
Hello? Is anyone there?
My voice wavered as I spoke. There was no response, just a haunting echo of my own words. I continued to search the building, each hallway and office seemingly devoid of life. It was as if I was walking through a ghost town. The air grew colder, and the building seemed to press down on me with an unsettling weight. In one of the darkest corners, I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. A flickering light, like a candle in the distance. I approached it cautiously, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The light led me to a long, forgotten room, hidden behind a half-open door. As I stepped inside, I could hear faint, distant whispers that sent shivers down my spine. Shadows danced on the walls, and the room was filled with the smell of old books and decay. There, in the middle of the room, I saw a single candle burning on an antique desk. It illuminated an open diary, its pages filled with unsettling drawings and cryptic writings. The diary's author seemed obsessed with some malevolent entity. I reached out to examine the diary, but as my hand touched it, the candle's flame flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. Panic set in as I heard a whisper, like a sinister voice, right beside me.
Get out!
It hissed, sending a shiver down my spine. I scrambled to my feet and fled the room, rushing back down the hallway in a desperate attempt to escape the oppressive presence that had taken hold of the building. I made it outside, gasping for fresh air, and watched in horror as the lights in the building flickered and went out one by one. The echoing whispers followed me out, like a haunting chorus that lingered in the night. That night, I was confronted by something that defied explanation. It was as if the building itself had come to life, and its malevolent spirit was determined to make its presence known. I still can't explain what happened that night, but it left me with a chilling realization that some places are best left undisturbed, and some entities are better left in the shadows. I've had my fair share of strange experiences as an Uber night driver. But there's one unforgettable encounter that still sends shivers down my spine. It was a moonless night, and the city streets lay eerily deserted. The occasional flicker of streetlights cast long, distorted shadows. I had just dropped off a passenger and was driving through a dimly lit, desolate street. That's when my phone pinged with a new ride request. The pickup location was an old abandoned street, known for its eerie legends. Despite my unease, I accepted the request. I arrived at the address, the car's headlights piercing the inky darkness. There stood a figure, a man, but his clothing seemed out of place, an old-fashioned suit, complete with a bowler hat. "Mike?" he asked, his voice demanding.
That's me.
I replied, trying to hide my unease. I watched him in the rearview mirror as he got into the car, his features obscured by the hat's shadow.
Where to?
I asked, hoping to initiate some small talk. The man simply muttered.
Take me to this address.
As I navigated empty streets, I noticed that he was unusually quiet. I glanced in the rearview mirror again, but this time I could see his face, or the lack of it. He had no features, just an empty void where a face should be. Panic coursed through my veins.
Who are you?
I stammered, my voice trembling. The figure didn't respond. Instead, a sense of dread enveloped in the car, and the temperature dropped drastically. I could see my breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. I knew I had to get away from this spectral presence. I accelerated the car, the engine roaring as I sped through the dark streets. The shadowy figure remained in the back seat, its featureless face turned toward me. I watched the road, fear gaunt at me. There was something otherworldly about my passenger. I didn't stop driving until I reached a brightly lit gas station, populated with people. I parked the car and turned around, but the back seat was empty. My strange passenger had disappeared without a trace. The police were called, and after some days, they told me that they found no record of a passenger matching the description, so they couldn't do anything further. My encounter that night had no rational explanation. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had picked up a passenger from a realm beyond our own. Whether it was a malevolent spirit, a ghostly apparition, or some other supernatural entity, it was a terrifying reminder that the night held secrets we may never fully understand. The memory of that spectral encounter continues to haunt my dreams, leaving me to wonder about the mysteries that can lurk in the darkest hours of the night. Thank you, horror aficionados, for watching our video. So next time you find yourself alone on a night shift, remember these tales of the unexplained. You never know what encounters await in the darkness. Thank you for all of you subscribers for the support and making it to the end of the video. And for everyone new, welcome. If you like this video, join our community of horror aficionados by liking, turning on post notification, and subscribing for more content like this. Stay safe and sleep tight if you can.